So, won't this proposed arrangement, as suggested by higher officials, interfere with our business model and open floodgates to similar requests?
Well, firstly, yes, technically it does interfere with our business model, but essentially we are about caring, not about a business, essentially. Well, that's what I think. And George has every right to negotiate where his money goes, because there's nothing in the Aged Care Act that says that he can't have an individualised or a consumer-directed model of funding. And again, if the floodgates do open and people want something similar, which obviously might happen, I believe there's more positives than negatives to this situation for what George wants to do. Financially, for example, currently what happens with our elderly, I believe, is a waste of a resource, because as our care system continues to grow and the aged care and people that use that facility, such as the elderly, they're placed in places such as hostels and nursing home, which generally is, as I said, a waste of resources. Because, for example, the longer that George's mother and people similar continue to be out of hostels and nursing homes, like what George is proposing, there's going to be more savings. For example, types of care, such as hostels and nursing homes, can cost anywhere between $100,000 and $200,000 per year per bed, depending on the level of care. As well, for many seniors, it's more important for them, I guess, to maintain independence. So George's mother and others like her will be able to maintain this independence with what George wants to do, because they'll be able to stay in their own homes. Currently, when seniors are moved into hostels and nursing homes, they have to adapt to a changed environment, which obviously can be difficult at any stage of life, let alone for people with Alzheimer's and with dementia, like what George's mum is suffering from. So if the elderly are able to stay at home, like what George is trying to do, the familiarity of surroundings will obviously benefit them, because they'll be familiar with the neighbourhood, the parks, the stores, and everything like that. And this familiarity actually promotes better mental health and general better self or well-being, which in turn takes demand off services such as mental health. So I see it as a win-win situation.
Okay. How do we ensure the integrity of the management of funds so that it won't end up being used for something else?
Well, I've spoken to George and he agrees that funds need to be managed, and that checks and balances do need to be in place so that George doesn't spend the money where he shouldn't, essentially. In the practical sense, George plans to be the employer of the people that work for his mother. So he would select and design the program and would claim against the funds that are being held by the provider. Essentially, the provider is the legal entity that keeps a check and balance on how George would spend the money. Therefore, George doesn't actually have any control of the money, but he can allocate where it is spent, such as on care. But the provider pays the carers and ensures that the funds don't end up being used for something else. George also plans to report to an agency that sends information back to the government about what he is doing and what is being provided, such as the level of care and the number of hours that is being provided. This will ensure that the agency and the provider are aware of where the money is going to be spent.
Okay, thanks for your time.
Done. I think we were just over.